So I couldn't help but notice that you've clicked on and are presently listening to an episode of Paranormal Patio. That's great. Thanks a lot for listening. We appreciate your support. And if you want to keep listening, you can find a whole bunch of other episodes on Spotify and wherever else you can get podcast episodes from, except for Apple. It's a personal decision. You can also find everything that you need to know about the show on paranormalpatio.com. We're on social media pretty much everywhere, I think. Just search for Paranormal Patio, and if we're on there, you'll find it. Also, we do have a Patreon, so head on over to patreon.com/beyondthepatio. You can get early access to episodes, tons of bonus content, monthly live streams, all kinds of good stuff. Thanks for listening, and we hope to have you back for the next one and all of the other ones. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Paranormal Patio. As always, I'm Jason. It's Hair-Raising Horror Week again. Yes, it's been a year since we met Adam Towla, and he happens to be here with me tonight and every night.
Here I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're doing some
It's
intros.
so good to be here. I can't believe it's been a year.
I know. It's crazy, right?
It is. But I'm so very thrilled that you asked me to be on here with you. So thanks again, Jason.
Of course, man. Of course. We have to have you be a part of it, And since I featured you last year, I wanted to feature a whole new crew this year. So I guess next year you can be back on?
I'll check my schedule. I'll get back to you. I'll let you know.
If your schedule is planned out that far ahead, I don't think we can be friends anymore.
No, I don't think you've seen my living room. I think we're good on I don't schedule anything, pretty much. So
except every
let's
time
not use any of that.
Okay.
I don't know what that was, but there's something in there you could use, a little nugget.
Sure. So yesterday we had the live stream with Kiki Dombrowski talking about Halloween traditions, which was awesome.
She is, and nobody knows their tarot deck like her.
That's for
She's
sure.
got it down pat.
She does.
Crazy. I love it.
So tonight, which is day 2 of Hair Raising Horror Week, we're doing the audio version of a live stream that happened back in September, which was our Hurricane Ida relief live stream. We had Alan Greenfield and the Penny Royal Gang and Lonnie Scott all on, and it was really organized chaos for about 2.5 hours. This will be a cut down version, unfortunately, but it was a good time.
Oh, they don't get to see all of it. It was pretty fun. I saw a big chunk of that myself. I'm not gonna lie. It was pretty funny. Y'all are crazy.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. So it will be left up, though. It's a Patreon exclusive live stream. So if you want to join the Patreon at Beyond the Patio, you can still see it. You can see the whole thing and all of its glory.
Get yourself some boxed wine and just sit there and enjoy the whole thing. Because I did. I think I went through it twice because it was that delightful.
The wine.
So y'all should check it out. All of it. All of the above.
So, yeah, this is just the abridged version for everybody else.
It'll be great
for the general public. So, another thing that I wanted to do this year, help people get into the Halloween spirit and help people maintain their sanity a little bit, is for every intro, I'm gonna give you guys a life pro tip to help you, manage certain things or do things differently for the Halloween season. There's a lot of stress for people who are into this weird stuff, right?
Oh, I have no idea what you're talking about as I'm watching the line of cars set up front of my house and look at the lights. I think I overdo it on Halloween, but I digress. Where were we?
Well, my life pro tip for episode 1 of Hair Raising Horror Week is everybody gets stressed out about candy Halloween time, right?
Yep.
You're afraid you're going to overeat the candy. You're going to get unhealthy, maybe get diabetes.
Absolutely.
It's a general concern. If I buy candy for the trick-or-treaters, I'm going to eat all of it. So here's what you do. Eat as much candy as you want. Okay? Are you with me so far?
I can get on board with this.
Okay. So you eat as much candy as you want. And when you're done, you just take a multivitamin and you trick your body into thinking candy is healthy. Boom.
I think that works. because I'm the healthiest I've been in about 13 years. So this life hack, I'm going to have to agree with you on that. Is there a buzzer? You got it. You got that nail right on the head. You just described a Tuesday night for me. But anyway, that's a great tip.
All right. I should point out that this episode contains adult language, and I think if you have some small children in the room or you're listening at work on speakers, you should probably wait until there's a better time to listen to it, but it's still really fun.
I'm Krista Coburn from Haunted Mitten, and you're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm AJ.
And you're listening to Paranormal Patio's Hair Raising Horror Week.
I'm Josh Banhook, and you're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
I'm Geraldine Stiff, and you're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
Hi, this is Jill Shelley, owner of the Haunted Boyd House, and you're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
I'm Tobias Wayland, and you're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
I'm Stan Gordon, UFO researcher and author, and you're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
This is Bill Konkoleski, author of Experiencer Raised in Two Worlds and Experiencer 2, Two Worlds Collide. You're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
Hello, guys. Welcome to the live stream number 2, the Hurricane Ida relief live stream. It's a big one. We've got a lot of people here, and I hope everything goes swimmingly. I'm sure that it will. I've been looking forward to this for the whole week, and I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk to all these great people. I've had the pleasure of talking to all of them, but I don't think any of them have had the pleasure of meeting and talking to each other yet, with the exception of the 3 Pennyroyal guys. They know each other pretty well, I think, at this point. Really a lot to absorb here, I'm sure, tonight. There's no format. There's no plan. We're just going in, and I think we'll just have some good, honest conversation. With that being said, I would like to first introduce the Pennyroyal gang. I think they're ready. We're going to add them to the stream. Hey, guys. How are you?
Hey, guys. Can you hear us okay?
I hear you great. You guys sound awesome. How are you guys? You doing good?
Fantastic, man. Thanks for having us on tonight,
Super pumped, man. Super pumped. For anybody, this video will be left up and probably mutated in some form in the future. So for anybody who doesn't know, who you guys are, just a really brief introduction of what Pennyroyal is and what you guys have going on.
Yeah. Well, Pennyroyal is a podcast about the strange things we found here in Somerset, Kentucky, over about a 3-year investigation. And lots of weird stuff. And we dive into the backstory of a lot of weird characters here in town and how it relates to a lot of different sort of conspiracies and paranormal things happening here. And and we're about to later this year, end of this year, have the 2nd season come out. So, yeah. And I'm Nathan Isaac.
Kyle Cadell. Darren West.
The 3 amigos. Looking forward to season 2, guys. Absolutely. I know a lot of some of the stuff that's happening just from being in the Liminal Lodge, but it won't be the same. Listening to it will be so much better, I'm sure. So, yeah, really looking forward to that. Absolutely.
Thanks, man.
Lonnie, welcome to the stream, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me okay?
You sound great.
Excellent. As every podcaster should, my brother.
Yeah. So I'll ask you to do kind of the same treatment here for people who don't know who you are, which everybody who's listening to the show should know all of these people. Just give kind of a brief rundown of who you are and what you do.
I am Lonnie Scott, the host of Weird Web Radio. It's a paranormal and occult podcast. I'm getting ready to launch my 6th season here coming up soon. You may recognize me as the hypnotist in Hellier Season 2, Episode 7, Episode 9. I'm a professional tarot reader, rune reader. I'm was once a high read member of the Troth. I'm now an ambassador globally for the same organization. And I do an awful lot of things. I'm co-author of the book El Hazablaze, A Compendium of Chaos Heathenry, and I've got a book coming out soon with Llewellyn Publications concerning practical magic and hauntings. So there's a really quick rundown.
Yeah, good job. Good job. Looking forward to the book. I know you've been working on it for a little bit. You know, setbacks, you know, with the world being the world right now. But we're still looking forward to it. I got to buy the first copy, man. You got to let me know.
No, you'll get one free. If
oh,
people
sweet.
don't know, all that Weird Web Radio swag available in my shop, Jason is the guy who does all the graphics for him.
Here he is, guys. Alan Greenfield. Alan, how are you tonight?
You always ask me the hard questions. I don't know how I am. I'm not a podcaster, but I do play one on television. I'm really a stripper. Stripping for Ida.
Well, Alan, you have authored many great books. You've also appeared on Hellier. What are you up to nowadays?
More books and doing other people's podcasts, so I don't have to do the work myself. I just sit and talk, and people are stupid enough to listen to me. I'm Alan fucking Greenfield, the Jewish bishop. Money, Patreon. Money, give money to Ida.
We'll add everybody
I can tell the story about my night in Hopkinsville, Kentucky that was amused and amazed.
Yeah, well, we'll hear that then in just a second. We're going to go ahead and add everybody back in. Yeah, if you want to tell that story real quick, that'd be awesome, Alan.
Okay. Well, I was on my way to the annual UFO convention in Cleveland, Ohio, and when you're driving, you have to go through the bluegrass country of Kentucky, and we happened to stop at a motel. I won't mention the name of the motel in Hopkinsville, and I thought, Kelly Hopkinsville, goblins, yeah, they're cool. And in the middle of the night, I woke up, and there were all kinds of insects, tens of thousands of them, on the walls. I was not hallucinating. Actually, I was not hallucinating. But it was every variety of insect that you can imagine. And so I nudged my wife. That's nudge in America, but it's nudge in Yiddish because I'm a Jewish bishop. Want to see my dental work? No.
Beautiful.
So I said, I think we should leave. And she was a very convincing person. She lives in Arkansas now, I think, and is old like me. But, as he prattled on, she wouldn't leave, so I covered myself as best I could under the sheets, under the pillows, and endured the night of the living dead. Thought I was going to tell a goblin story, right?
I didn't know where it was going. I'm going to be honest with you. I never know.
Then I went on to Cleveland, and we lived happily ever after until the divorce. But that's another story. It involves grad school and Arizona.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that one. I think we'll let that one go. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, with your stories, I never know where it starts is never where I think it's going to end. And there's all these things that happen in between, and I'm always left speechless. And in a good way, of course.
No, wait. Go kill that dude.
Where? Sorry, we just saw the largest spider we've ever seen here in Nathan's house. It's like this big. I'm going to go take care of it.
Don't kill it. Take it outside.
Where is it?
We have a brown recluse problem here at the house right now. So it's
well, you know, if you have a brown recluse problem, don't let them bite you in your skin.
I know. That's
you might not wake up.
Deadly spiders.
When I was in grad school in Tucson, there were places that we went on archaeological field trips that had outhouses, and they said, "Don't sit down before you look." Black widow spiders love to weave their web on toilet seats, and they resent the intrusion of thy ass, and they will make you regret it. So,
Take a picture.
God for constipation, right?
All right. Well, let's try to assemble some sort of order here.
Order.
Thank you, Judge Greenfield. Lonnie, in this whole little realm where you guys are all connected through Hellier, am I right in assuming you haven't met anybody else here?
No, I've not met any of these good people. As you may know, my method when I podcast is a little different than what a lot of other podcasters do. I don't just become magician A and interview magician B. I try to get people on my show so I can pick apart the inner psychology of why they do the things that they do. Mm-hmm. Not only how, I mean, of course, I want to get into that, but I want to really know why. What's the real reason behind driving forward as a witch or as a magician or as a sorcerer or a druid or any of the sort. And when it comes to paranormal investigators, like, what is it that keeps you fueled to keep going out into the field and looking for something, whether it's experience or answers? Like, what is always that driving thing behind all of the things you do? And that's my method as a podcaster. And it's always tailored to my guests specifically.
Sure.
No, I didn't come in here ready to ask anybody questions, Jason.
Well, I just thought, it's been, how many years has it been now since Hellier happened? I just thought maybe there's something you're like, well, if I ever ran into that person on the street, I would definitely want to ask him this.
Yeah, when my part in Hellier was pretty unique, and the first experiment that was featured with me in Hellier was doing the alien abduction scenario, and that was something that Greg and I cooked up way back in 2011. And when we decided how we were going to film it, they came here to Mattoon, Illinois. We got a hotel room, and I conducted suggestibility exercises for everybody in the room, and I'd early on picked Jason because of things he was doing, experimenting with lucid dreaming. And it proceeded from there. That particular project was supposed to be featured in their documentary series called Planet Weird. That never happened, but they kept that film and some other things in the can waiting for something that they were going to do, because one thing, if you met Greg and Dana even back then, you knew that these were people who were constantly going to be creating something. And of course Hellier was born. I didn't know they were going to put the alien abductions experiment in there in the second season until after we had filmed the episode where I use hypnosis induction to try to get Carl to go meet some spirit ally somehow in trance and see if he can get useful information to bring forward that would be actionable. I actually conducted that experiment with Connor as well. After Carl, we had booted everybody out of the room we were working in so we could actually have more privacy. Carl had the hardest job of anyone I've ever worked with in hypnosis. He had cameras strapped to him. He had cameras pointed at him. He had people whispering. Greg was whispering in my ear saying, ask him about this, ask him about that. And that, of course, you don't see any of that on video. So when we tried it with Connor, we kicked everybody out, and I don't know if they're going to show that footage someday or not. I personally felt that Connor's experience was a little bit more interesting than Carl's for different reasons. Connor's just a better hypnotic subject for a lot of reasons than Carl is. And again, that's part of the reason why we chose Carl is he was going to be kind of the most difficult, but he had that unique perspective of the whole project. He's the guy that's been behind the camera the whole time, and he's the one who, by all accounts, was the witness of everything. He really wasn't involved directly in any of the experiments the way everyone else in the group was. So, I mean, that's my involvement with Hellier is that I knew Greg and Dana. We had worked together on various other projects aside from these hypnosis things. I wrote for them when they had the Who Forted blog and et cetera, et cetera. We just had friendship over years. And as to the rest of the case of Hellier, I wasn't given any more insight into what was going on than anyone who watched it from home. I mean, I sat there looking at the stack of books that Dana and Greg had in that house outside of Somerset. And I kept poking at him going, hey, I happen to notice you have a book on this and a book on that. And why don't you have a book that just trying to get more answers out of them. And of course they weren't giving up. So nope, I don't have any questions about Hellier. I think we've all had our own experience with that particular project, what we contributed to it. Everybody who's been involved with it in some way has their own particular pet theories. I tend to stay a little bit fluid on those. No, that's really all I've got.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. The guys down in Somerset right now, the Pennyroyal gang, I'm sure I've heard you talk about your involvement in Hellier, much like Lonnie, just kind of, describe his for us, probably, a dozen times. But from your perspective, what was it like being involved with it?
Well, it ended up being really awesome because I think I personally had a lot of connections to that story before Hellier even came out. I remember when it came out on the Who Forwarded blog and they talked about it. And even when the museum opened in 2017 and I had never met Greg and Dana and even forgot that they're the ones that talked about the goblins in Eastern Kentucky, I would still share that story and kind of reproduce that thought in the museum forever, because obviously with the museum, I like to collect all these stories, especially Kentucky based. And so it's really beautiful to be able to have this like up and coming, like current story to be able to tell to people. And I had met Greg and Dana a few years previous at CryptidCon here in Lexington, Kentucky. And we talked very basic about, museum stuff is before my museum was open, I believe. And, we just got to know each other. And then I met them a second time, and I do remember them asking some questions about, we've heard some stuff about Somerset, but that was even before, really we had talked about Hellier or anything like that. And so eventually during September of 2019, I believe, Greg got a hold of me and said that they were just passing through. He didn't mention anything about Hellier Season 2. He didn't mention anything about those emails or anything that had brought him to Somerset. He just messaged and said, hey, we wanted to check out the museum and ask you a few questions. And they did. The whole crew stopped by that day and checked out the museum and asked me a little bit about, cults and secret societies and caves in Somerset and stuff like that. But really basic stuff to where I didn't even know that they were talking about Hellier. I have a UFO sighting in Eastern Kentucky, not too far from Hellier, from when I lived over there in a town called Whitesburg. So I was excited to share that story with them. But obviously at that point, their attention had turned to Somerset without us knowing. So it was great to be able to talk to them. And then they mentioned they were going to be back in a couple days and wanted to interview us. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And he's like, Greg and Dana were like, do you know anyone else that might have some great local stories about this stuff? And Nathan and I had just started really talking just a few months before that and becoming kind of friends through that. And so I was like, yeah, absolutely. My friend Nathan would love to talk to you guys. And so we didn't know that they were staying in Somerset, between the first time they came and then when they filmed, it was while they were staying in that house there, and they did the experiment with Lonnie. And we didn't even realize that at that point. But then they came in and filmed for Hellier, and then we walked over to Nathan's studio, which is a block away from the museum, and obviously you saw that part in Hellier as well. But it was just really validating, I think, to an extent, to be able to, we've always thought this place is strange, so it was really nice to have people from an outside source pick up on that same kind of thread that we, followed,
I still think that the strangest thing in all of this for me, right, is the fact that we didn't know that they were fucking filming, right?
Yeah.
And so they, I was like, there's no fucking cult here,
yeah,
this is fucking absurd, there's no cult. And then obviously I told them some of the paranormal stories and shit like that, but then I talked about the cult rumors, and then that's when, obviously you see in the show, Greg confirmed a woman fucking contacted us and told us the same thing, right? So then after we had that whole exchange, I was like, holy fuck, we have found something we shouldn't have found.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to fucking murder us. Let's back the fuck off, So anyway, we didn't know that any of that was part of the show, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting how poignant the questions they were asking were to our stage of investigation in Pennyroyal, because what they were asking was really what we were looking up at that exact time, you know?
Yeah, because they didn't realize that we had spent the prior 2 years interviewing all of these people, putting all this stuff together. Then they left, and again, the weirdest thing is that, I'm working with fucking Dan Dutton, this Kentucky artist, a very well-known Kentucky artist here, about his encounter in Elkhorn City, which is fucking Hellier, that's a suburb of Elkhorn City. And that he had done this opera called The Faun about Pan, where he had encountered Pan there. And then when the show comes out, the 8th episode is called The Secret Commonwealth, which is also, obviously we know, the original book about fairies, that shares the same title. But also Dan had created a 4-part opera series called The Secret Commonwealth that was shown on PBS and all over America, right? And so then Dan and I had gone to do this documentary about his experience where he encountered the archetype of Pan in Elkhorn City, and we were going to restage the opera in Breaks Interstate Park to see if we could invoke artistically, not even a fucking magical way, but just artistically, could we invoke Pan? And then when Hellier came out, the final fucking episode, man, was the Night of Pan. Here they are in Somerset doing a ritual to Pan.
Yeah.
And Dan and I traveled to, basically to Elkhorn City, to Hellier, to do the same thing. And, that's when I texted Greg, and I'm like, what the fuck is this, dude? This is weird. And then he texted me back. And it was the morning after, it was November 29th, the fucking show comes out. I watched it at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Of course, I skipped to the part we were in, And then first thing in the morning, at like 7 a.m., I texted him. I was like, what the fuck, And I told him about the project with Dan Dutton and the connection to Pan. And he texted me back. He was like, I'm looking at my fucking wall, and here are all of these photos of Dan Dutton and these articles about Dan Dutton. To me, that is an extremely fucking strange intersection, right? Outside of fucking goblins or whatever the fuck you want to believe, like, that is extremely, extremely fucking weird, right?
Yeah.
That those things intersected. And that all started in fucking 1979 when Dan, which I almost said Pan, right? When Dan, right? Think about this too, right? It's the cult of Pan, right? Which, again, our studio is above Jarfly Brewing, and the symbol of the cult of Pan is the Jarfly, right? Is the cicada, which is weird. That was a weird sort of correlation. But the first Christian church, right? St. Peter, right? Who was Samuel. They were in Caesarea Philippi in Israel in the Golan Heights. And that's where the grotto of Pan was located. And it was in that grotto that Peter, Samuel declared, the Apostle Samuel declared that Jesus was the God incarnate. And so then he said, from henceforth, you're St. Peter, which means the rock on which I'll build my church, right? So then you find this whole thing of this conquering of the pagans, right? In the grotto of Pan, Yeah. And that city where that's located was the city of Dan, which I think is funny.
Wow. I didn't even know that. Yeah, the city of Dan.
Way, but this isn't research I came across. Once we put the fucking show out, a fucking tidal wave of insanity. People were sending us all kinds of crazy shit. I didn't know any of this, right? I was receiving fucking messages about people, about how Pan would be crushed. Pan will fall. And you've aligned yourself with Pan, and it's the end of the fucking world. These Christian esoteric scholars started fucking hammering us, that we had aligned ourselves with the fucking devil, which was Pan, and all this shit. So I don't know, man. I mean, I think all of that stuff, to me, when you think of synchromysticism and all of the weirdness of all this, like, for me, that's a really strange thing that fucking happened. And then obviously, I mean, that was the intersection, that's where it fucking crossed. And definitely for me, it validated like something's happening, right? Something strange is happening. Let's look at it. Let's look at this. So yeah. For us, that was the extent of it. And then we rolled on with our investigation and of the town and found some fucking shit that's
so
bizarre. I don't know.
Really bizarre. Yeah, absolutely. Alan, what was it like for you being involved? I know you're more involved probably than anybody else here. So
I don't know how much influence the original edition of Complete Guide. Well, it was just what's it called back then, the numerology book, as they called it, or as Jim Mosley called it, was on them, but I think it was a considerable one. And apparently it had influence on other people too, although, it sold well back in the day and then disappeared until they kind of revived the story. And then I had a bestseller on my hand. I went from being almost obscure to being, as I like to call myself, almost famous. It did have an influence on them, but apparently they were very focused on the Terry thing. And I mean, I knew the guy like for a year back in the 80s, was it? 1980s, like back when the dinosaurs ruled the earth. So I really couldn't tell him his real name because I never asked it. We were in a very, very political, radical group back in the day when that was the thing. So everybody had, I was Spider Rainbow, and my wife was Lacey Rainbow. And to this day, the few people that I know from that era, I called them by their noms de guerre. A couple of them I know who they are, but they're, they're still involved in that sort of thing. I'm not. So I respect their privacy. I mean, it's like outing the Weather Underground, that you don't do that. I once investigated a Pascagoula case with, we won't say a member of the Weather Underground, but a person who was responsible for a weather depot in Pascagoula, Mississippi. I have the singular honor of having investigated that case before it was a case, because I was investigating Pascagoula, the Singing River, like way before the Hickson Parker case. So I was familiar with a lot of local people and was able to got into an argument with Charlie Hickson over a beer. But in any case, the thing that struck me about Hellier is I noticed that the Pennyroyal folks did not use the term synchronicity. And the best advice I gave to Greg, who I knew slightly from, he was a Facebook friend before I got tossed off of Facebook for reasons unknown. I mean, I've been tossed out of the Boy Scouts, the OTO, and Facebook. I descent into awareness, as it were. But the best advice I gave them was follow the synchronicities. And that indeed is what Pennyroyal collectively, I will refer to them collectively because I'm bad on names, we're talking about. Those were synchronicities. And if you follow the synchronicities, other synchronicities will follow. No pun intended.
Matthew says Hellier would have been totally different if they were looking for Lacey Rainbow instead of Terry Harris.
Well, they might have the same luck with Lacey Rainbow because during the course of our marriage, which was kind of what ended it, was she had always wanted to have what she called a refuge. And she eventually found one, sold her house here in Atlanta long after we were parted ways. Well, we didn't, we're still friends, but, and she lives in a refuge in a place which also I respect. But, everybody in Atlanta occult circles knows her, so that's no mystery at all. You can, if you want validation that she exists, not just in the mind of Spider fucking rainbow. Oh, actually, my not to plug. Yes, it is a plug. My current book on the Holy Grail is largely devoted to experiments I did with Lacey, who doesn't call herself Lacey now. She uses yet another nom de plume, not nom de guerre. She was a member, but not anywhere near as radical as the rest of us. In any case, they did follow the synchronicities, and on that particular point, they got it. And I think they have picked up the ball and run with it, and they'll be running with it long after I have shuffled off this immortal coil.
Alan, I did have a question that someone had sent me in. It's actually from Marco Visconti. He said that he'd like to hear from you what your take on the use of the star sapphire is in Hellier, because in your books, Terry Riss clearly speaks of the connection with Orgone, and the fact that the star sapphire, when properly understood as a sex magical ritual, can disrupt and destroy the bad UFO experience. However, in Hellier, and starting with John Tenney, they state that maybe the phenomena wants new magic. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in The Grail Within, I talk about the sex magic component of that. And I don't know, the star sapphire can be read several different ways, and I think that's deliberately so. I've worked the star sapphire both ways, sexually and ceremonially, and it works perfectly well without the sex, but it's more fun with. Ask Lacey Renbow. All I know, considering the kind of circle we were in, ask Terry Riss, because it was a very, very friendly circle of people that you brought in fullness. However, I will say this about the Mammoth Cave system. Is that a change of subject? It isn't really. If you
go ahead.
Above the Mammoth Cave system and extensions and all of the mines drilled in the coal country from Kentucky and West Virginia, well, throughout Appalachia, you will find that whether you're in a town where you have great people like Penny Royal documenting things going on, and it gets weirder and weirder and weirder. But I think if you went to a town at random, somewhere along that ley line that runs from Kentucky into West Virginia, see, the dog agrees with me, but that's not important, right? That's not my dog. For instance, literate witnesses and nobody taking an interest in it. But if you tap a local scene in that, I mean, my late friend Gray Barker lived almost all of his life in West Virginia. He was technically from Rifle, Virginia, but he lived in Clarksburg, and he's been accused of all kinds of things, but principally he was documenting how weird stuff is. His book, The Silver Bridge, documents it in a kind of poetic sense. He was a poetry major in college. And he wrote it that way because it's the folklore of Appalachia is more like poetry than prose. Sort of the way we in Reformed Judaism regard the scriptures as poetry, not prose. And the great error is, taking it too literally. I think that where you have competent witnesses, you're going to find lots and lots of these synchronous connections that are acausal. One time, John Keel, I think it was before he ever did the West Virginia thing, I persuaded my dad to pay his way down to Atlanta so he could speak to our UFO group. And turned out he was the last speaker, and he decided to drive back through West Virginia. But I will never forget something he said in his talk. And only the way that John Keel could do it, because he could convince you of almost anything. If somebody hitting a bomb, well, if you want to hit the bong with us, folks, you got to contribute, because Special deal. Not allowed in Illinois or in Georgia, where nothing is allowed.
I want to change gears just a little bit. Nathan's raising his hand here. It's really, this is an informal thing. You don't have to do that.
Right.
But no, go ahead.
All
I have a question for you.
I totally agree with Alan that like so much of this, like if you think about like the fucking mines in Eastern Kentucky. Also, I'm going to say fuck a lot.
You already have.
You know, just gonna talk the way I normally do.
I can't.
That's
the
okay.
middle name my mother gave me. She looked at me, and all of them saying he looks like a rat to my father and the doctor and the moil, which is.
All I was going to say is that I agree with him that definitely if you look at the Mammoth Cave system and then Eastern Kentucky, all the you know. One of the funny things is that if you look at, which we haven't talked, I don't know if we've talked about this with anybody, but if you look at the cave system where the Hellier stuff happened, right? It's that actual mine, not cave system, but the actual mine that is on the property that they drove by was owned, but probably is still owned. I haven't looked in a while, but was owned by the guy that Trump appointed to be the Secretary of the Interior, right? So there's this. So if you get on the U.S. mining maps database, right, and you find the property that they looked at that has the mine on it, it's clearly owned by this guy, right? Which is totally weird. Anyway, what I was saying though is that when you look at all this, it is absolutely like what Alan's saying about place and about witnesses in those places, right? You know, that's ultimately what Pennyroll was, you know, the underlying sort of theme of the thrust of the show was to say why are certain places the way they are, but also if you look at the place that you live in, you're going to find some weird fucking shit, right? People just don't look at it. They think, you know what? I live in the most fucking boring place in America, right? Especially in West Virginia, especially in Eastern Kentucky. You know, I was born in coal country. My dad's a fucking coal miner, right? Retired. And so, like, you know, a town of 5,000 people, nothing's fucking there. But when you look at it, when you really look at wherever you are, you're going to find something fucking magical, right? And I think that's the thing that Americans, entitled Americans, and we're all fucking entitled Americans, right? Yeah, right? You, Alan, me, you know, like these motherfuckers to either side of me, you know, like we're all fucking entitled, right? Especially because we're white men, you know, and that, you know, like fuck, you know. But it's like when you really take a second and you look at where you're at, you're going to find this crazy narrative, right? And interacting with that is going to tell you a lot about who you are and a lot about where that place is and a lot about how that place is affecting you and how who you are is affecting that place. And here where we are, fuck, man, it's changed everything. You know, there's a weird feedback loop. And Alan, I mean, I really believe that a lot of this is cybernetic. You know, synchronicities are cybernetic moments, right? There's a weird feedback loop that's very personal. And Lonnie, I'm curious what you think too, in terms of like when people experience synchronicities, is it a synchronicity only because you're going back through that loop again and again, right? I think people experience those loops thousands of times a day, right? There are all kinds of little things that connect, right? That are the right frequency, but we shuffle them off, you know. We're just like, you know. But the ones we look at, the ones we take notice of, those build. You know, it's that whole idea of second order cybernetics, right? That it builds on itself and it feeds back into the system, and then you have these moments where it's like they grow in significance, Look at the fucking blue star balloons, you know? All the people that are like, that's really significant. Well, it's only significant because you believe it's significant, because you're feeding back into that system, right, of correlations that we're building. And I think that's an underlying part of magic. You know, we don't practice magic, but definitely from a data standpoint, you know, when you're looking at these things, you are creating connections within a data set, right? And circularity, right? And they become more and more significant. And so, like, you know, people aren't data scientists, you know? They don't know these things. And so when they interact with information and situations that present themselves this way, they feel really special, right? But really there's something else ingrained in the system, you know, and people don't stop to look at their lives anymore. You know, I had dinner with Dan Dutton earlier tonight, right? For a little while, and we were talking about the fact that people, you know, the art that he's working on feels very mystical right now, feels very pointed toward understanding the context of his life right now and the last 50 years that he's produced art. And he's done things lately, especially this project and these things that we're talking about. They made him recontextualize older projects, right? And so it's like, you know, what about it in our lives is that, you know, always we're presented with the mystery. We just never look at it, right? Most people don't ever look at it. Those of us, Alan, Lonnie, us, you, Jason, you know, you found that in your life. Look at the investigation you're on, right?
Yeah.
It's like the mystery's actually the thing that's always presenting itself. But all this other shit that we think is normal, like fucking Netflix on the fucking TV, or all these things that we're doing, all the fucking media, right? That we think is normal, right? That's not the thing. The thing is, it's always saying the mystery's here, it's waiting for you, and it's waiting for you to play the game. And most people never play the game. They're very happy sitting on this goddamn couch watching fucking Netflix, right? But when you start playing this game, and when you start looking at this fucking shit, it infects you in a way that you're like, I have a goddamn family, man. I have a job. I don't have time to fucking run around and chase this shit down, right? But it doesn't matter, because once you really start looking at it, it really does look back at you, right, Alan? I mean, when you really start digging into this, it's like, fuck, man, you know,
it's like a new mate, a new player, you know.
Lonnie, what are your thoughts on the relativity of synchronicity to magic and to investigation?
One of the things that I have told most of my students over the years concerning synchronicities is to keep a synchronicity journal, similar to like what people might do with a dream journal or something to that effect. Because when you start to notice synchronicities, if they're going to have any kind of like real meaning or anything, you'll often find them within a flow of your activity. If you're within the world of working magic, that is. I don't know how people go out about their random day and they see a random this and a random that and they try to tie them all together, because, as mentioned before, synchronicities can happen anywhere. I think they're just sort of these moments within the field, that which is, and will be everything connected. It just has these areas and locations that are prone to more strange occurrences. And within that, your activity in the field, let's say that you go outside every day and you pour a glass of water at the tree in your front yard and you say thank you to the land spirits for the good nature and good health of your home and hearth, right? And you do that every day, and you do that for several days. And then all of a sudden you might start to notice signs for greener grass here and, you know, healthier trees here and things that would really appeal to improving even more of the health of your yard. On a similar effect, something like Robert Anton Wilson said once, if you spend every day of your life praying to the sun god Ra, eventually you're going to start encountering things associated with the sun god Ra. So synchronicities are, at one time, I think they're both a wild occurrence within the field that can be some kind of signal that you're along a path, that you're in a flow state of sorts. And on another hand, synchronicities can be a confirmation bias to start to make you feel kind of special in times and places when maybe you're not. So they're complicated.
I want to fall back on something that Nathan said a little bit ago when he was talking about looking into, everybody where you live, look into what you can find, and you're going to find weird stuff. And Lonnie, who doesn't live very far from me, like I could drive there right now and I could be on his camera before the stream was over, and vice versa. But there's a famous story of Mattoon, the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. I don't want to really get into that too much, but have you found in your journey and in your place, have you found any other weirdness in Mattoon, Illinois?
Oh, plenty. I live here. That's one. It's something that Jason Miller likes to say. Jason Miller is the instructor of like the Strategic Sorcery course, Sorcery of Hecate, all kinds of different stuff. An excellent author and teacher, big influence on my practice for many years. And something he's always said is that all sorcery is local. And I've always taken that to heart, especially as well as a heathen. Like, you're always looking to what it is in your own area that is sacred and special. Where are those weird spots, those haunted spots? Who are your local legends and so on? So, the Mad Gasser was a weird thing for sure. I kind of think the Mad Gasser incident was the government testing out gases on a small, sleepy Midwestern town, but I digress. One of the weirdest things about Mattoon, how it got started, is that it's named after a railroad tycoon named William Mattoon, who never set foot here. That when the railroad started coming through this area, a bunch of former Confederates went and put stakes all through the area and were trying to sell plots of land to these railroad companies. And the railroad companies would call it Pegtown as a result of that. So they gambled together basically on who's going to pay them the most money for their slots of land they don't really own, and they name it all Mattoon in order to try to get this guy to pay them a shit ton of money. And that's kind of how the town gets its name. One of my favorite spots in town, as far as like paranormal occurrences are, there's two that I really enjoy. One of them is a spot that's called the Lone Elm, and it no longer stands there. It was a giant elm tree that used to stand in the prairie grass that was here. And it would be a place where travelers would stop as on their way west. It'd be a place where they could trade with the local native tribes. The Kickapoo tribe lived through in this area, especially. You could hunt, trade, rest, do all sorts of things, climb into that tree, look and see what was actually in the prairie grass as you were going along. And the tree's been gone, but you can get a real good, cool sense of, connection with that sort of wayfinding spirit, as it were. You still get a real good sense of that tree and that idea that this is a sacred spot. Unfortunately, it sits on the corner of someone's property. So you have to be careful if you're going to interact with any such spirit or activity that goes through that area. Another spot that I really like to just kind of chill out is now it's a parking lot by an old church, and it's across from a big grocery store. But the cool thing is you could stand in the middle of that parking lot, especially at night whenever the town's quiet, and you can kind of hear music. It's more operatic. You might hear the large drums, you might hear horns, but it's really got this operatic tone to it. And for a long time, I had no idea where that music was coming from. I thought it was coming from the grocery store or someone who lived nearby. And I had to eliminate it. So one day I find the 1896 street fair book for Mattoon, and in it, it's making a comment about the original burial grounds in Mattoon and how they're moving the graves to the new the new official city cemetery. And I go on a hunt to try to find it. But in there, I see them talking about this old theater that used to sit exactly where that parking lot and that church are now, and how it was a big attraction for everyone in the Midwest, and people were coming there all the time. And then I go digging into that history, and I find out that it burns down sometime in the 30s, and no one ever rebuilt it. It just has been an empty lot, and they built a church on part of that property later, and then the grocery store comes along, and on really quiet nights, if you stand still enough, you can kind of hear it. And I think that's really cool.
That is really cool. I see Nathan over there shuffling through some papers, and I know how Nathan's brain works, so I have a feeling that he has something that he wants to either say or ask one of you guys. What do you got cooked up over there, buddy?
No, man. I mean, Jesus.
Look at you.
Don't act like you know me so well.
I spent every Monday night with you. The last year, every Monday night for at least 2 hours. I'm beginning to understand how you operate.
I love you, by the way, for doing that. But all right, so I was gonna cut this up and put it in a bag and then, like, draw these questions out, but I'll just read them. There's only a few, you know what I mean? Because some of these questions, it's like, God, well, what kind of conversation will we have,
Until next time, keep the fire going.